Hi, and welcome to the Matriarchy with Lisa and Kath. Gosh, I can't believe we're already 5 episodes in.
No, it's very exciting, and I'm still having so much fun, so we're going to keep going.
Yeah, and Lisa, last episode you said like 10's the magic number, so we're halfway there.
Numbers, what we're hearing. Yep. So you guys all have to stay with us for at least 10, and then we're going to shoot off.
Yeah, that's right. You'll know us before we were hugely famous, right? I dream big. What can I say?
We can dream.
Well, I'm super excited about our next guest. And Lisa, do you want to introduce her?
Yes, we are so happy to have Diane Young here today to talk to us about women in finance. And Diane has a long history in the financial services industry, over 30 years. She began her financial planning career in the New York metropolitan area in the 80s. There she headed up a broker, dealer, and insurance agency in addition to running a successful financial planning practice. She has taught certified financial planning credentialing courses at NYU, as well as educational workshops for many organizations. She has also appeared on television, radio, and has written for Rochester Suburban Lifestyles, Living Better magazine, and National Underwriter. Recently, she has spoken to several groups, including the Royal Alliance National Education Conference on Marketing Financial Services to Women, Financial Planning Association of Michigan, Women in Transportation, Michigan Association of CPAs. She also is a heck of a volunteer with organizations such as Girl Scouts of Southeastern Michigan and leadership roles at the Paint Creek Center for the Arts, Forum, Rochester Rotary, the Warren Symphony Orchestra, and the Financial Planning Association of Michigan, among others. So when we say we're lucky to have her here, we are very lucky to have her here
Diane,
to share
her
experience.
Well, when you put 35 years of stuff on a piece of paper, it does sound like a lot.
Yeah, we need to celebrate that. That's a lot of hard work and a lot of service to all of us. So I'm gonna start you off by asking a little bit about your background, and in particular, how did you find your voice?
That's a great question because I think it takes women a long time to find our voice. One of my goals in life is, I jokingly call it helping women get their brass ovaries, because we always joke about men having brass balls. Women need to, I'd like to help shorten those years, the things that took me 15 to 25 years to go, aha.
Yep.
Like if I could shave 5 or 6 years off of that, that would be amazing. For women. So, obviously getting kicked in the cojones a lot, falling on your face. I do tend to be someone who isn't afraid of failure. But you learn from your mistakes, so don't be afraid of mistakes. But look to other people, look to mentors, find mentors, advocates, people who will champion you. And it doesn't always have to be another woman. It can be men. There are men who will champion you as well. So those are some of the things that, I've learned in the 40 some years I've been in business. Of those 35 years I've been in the financial services. And I was an anthropology major. I did not know the difference between a stock and a bond when I got into this industry. So have faith in yourself that you can learn and look to others for guidance.
Yeah, that's great. That's very interesting. Were there any women in particular that, mentored or inspired you throughout your career?
Oh my gosh, I've had some amazing women in my life. I'll never forget when I first became a assistant manager at Casual Corner for the older women in the audience. That was a mid-price level department store. And the woman that she was like, this is what you have to wear every day, pumps, a suit, this is how you dress. She goes, I don't care if it's the same every day, because if this is the only suit, as long as it's clean and professional looking. She taught me how to manage staff, how to, do all those things. She was kick-ass lady, really taught me a lot. And one of my biggest mentors, and I'll use her name, Rita Robbins. I talk to her all the time. I was just talking to her last night. She put the polish on I looked at it like when I got in this industry, I was a lump of coal, and it takes heat and pressure to make diamonds, right? So don't be afraid of the heat and the pressure. and then find someone that'll help put the polish on you, right? So, there were people that, put pressure on. It wasn't always pleasant, right? And sometimes it meant job changes along the way. Don't be afraid to leave a firm or to be left, Sometimes it's because it means you need a better opportunity, or you need a little more pressure to turn into that diamond. And, but this dear person who is a kick-ass woman in the financial field, her organization runs $5 billion. She told me last night. I'm like,
Wow.
I used to work for her in New York City, and she taught me how to order champagne, and how to eat a steak, and how to order off the menu, which was, as a Midwest girl, that was something I never would bother the waiter to ask for something that wasn't listed on the menu. She taught me so many different things, and she taught me one valuable lesson she taught me is that no one person or client is worth your reputation. So she would be willing to fire someone or to end the relationship with, let's say, another advisor or a client if they were jeopardizing your reputation by doing something unethical. So she's been a fabulous mentor. And then I've tried to return the favor to many women. I mentor women in my industry a lot, as well as I'm involved in politics. I try to mentor as many women getting into politics or trying to do things like that.
You're extending the ladder.
Yes, I think it's really important for us as women to reach our hand back and pull the next generation off. Even when I kind of grumpily as a Gen Xer, sometimes they don't say thank you when you're doing it. And it gets a little crabby about that because, I did have these great women mentors, but I did also kind of come at the tail end of when women were competing with one another and would not always do that. And they would be resentful to me, and sometimes I find myself being a little resentful, like, but I have to let it go and realize that it's all for the better good. But just say thank you. To the mentees out there, just say thank you. Most of your mentors or champions will be happy to do something. Just thank them for whatever they've done for you.
A little appreciation goes a long way.
Take them
It
to lunch.
does.
Buy them a cup of coffee.
It does, absolutely.
Well, I love what you said about, your mentor led with her values,
Yes.
right? And she was willing to let a client go. And so let's dig a little bit into our value system because, this episode is going to be about women and finance and like what we need to know. And as a society, we don't know how to talk about money. We are often not taught that from childhood. In fact, we are actively discouraged from talking about money. Like it was crude, and not even taught sometimes the basics about how to manage our personal finances. And so, we kind of are left to our own devices to, and there's nothing wrong with like, learning from experience, but maybe it doesn't have to be quite so hard. And so how do we have these conversations? What advice can you give about how to approach these often sensitive subjects?
Well, first off, you have to think about your own relationship with money. For many of us, as you mentioned, it is a taboo topic. I have my own personal unscientific anthropological view on that women don't we don't ask for money for ourselves. We'll ask for money for someone else. Like I will champion for someone else to get a raise or something like that. But we don't ask for ourselves. And I think the deep down part in our cortex, the brain, is that what kind of girls ask for money? Naughty girls. When you think about it, like what kind of girl says, "Give me $100"? It's the naughty girls. And I think that's somewhere in our brain set that I shouldn't have to ask for a raise. I shouldn't have to, they should just know I need it, right? Men have no problems demanding a raise, demanding equal pay, demanding better pay. Studies show that men and women straight out of college, the young man at 22 will negotiate a salary where a woman accepts the salary. So just that at 22, fresh out of college, that disproportionate raise or difference in salary for the same position at an organization puts her at a disadvantage for the rest of her career because it impacts her Social Security, it impacts her 401k matches, it impacts her next job. It also probably impacts her even at that current job because the boss who hired these two young people, right, into the same program, a lot of these corporations have training programs, and, the boy asked for, 44,000 and she accepted the 40,000. So you think about, well, who's the boss going to send on that job that's going to require a tough negotiator? And he looks around, well, she didn't bother to negotiate her own salary, so I'll send him. So then he gets positioned for the next leap in his job, and she's relegated to a non-profit and loss part of the organization. So the number one thing I'd want to teach any woman at any stage, but especially younger women, to reduce the time to get your brass ovaries is how to negotiate. And one of the best books, and it's out of print, but you can get it on Amazon used, is Start With No by Jim Camp. It was a life-changing book for me.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, and it's know your worth, right?
Yeah. Well, no, not only your worth, know the worth of the job. And if you can't negotiate for the salary, then negotiate for a title, negotiate for time off, or an extra vacation day, or, a better office, if that's of importance to you. For me, in my particular firm, I'm not that into what I look like, but as far as my office space goes, but my staff, I actually have a personality test I administer, and one of my staff people came up that prestige was very high for her, even though she was a back office ops person. When we moved offices, I was like, which office do you want? And she was like, oh, well, I want this one. So you walk into the firm, you think she was the CEO and I'm back in the corner, but it wasn't important to me. It was important to her. And that's what she wanted to negotiate. She also negotiated a coffee machine, like an Italian fan. I was like, whatever makes you happy. That would, I could drink out of a pot. That was fine. So you're right. Know your worth. Know what's important to you, and just ask. What's the worst thing? I think women are afraid of no.
Afraid to ask. Yeah. My brother once gave me really good advice, and that is, I was struggling with a new job and in this exact situation. He was like, Kath, ask for what you want because you are going to be working ridiculous hours and you're going to be pouring your heart and soul into this job, and you don't want to be resentful. You should be compensated fairly. And there was a bit of he acknowledged the gender gap as well, but it was really helpful advice that I mean, it's hard, right? But I do try and carry that.
Well, and women like to, we're kind of brought up, especially post Gen X women are brought up that we're super women. We can do everything, and we can have everything. And the thing is, men never had everything. They had a career. They didn't have cuddle time with their kids. Their children didn't know who they were. You know what I mean? So they didn't have it all either. So this work-life balance, it's about having things at certain times in your life, right? You might say, I'm going to have a fantastic career, and guess what? Laundry's not going to get done. Or I think what men do better than women is delegate out to other people, where we'll go, oh, I can do that. Why would I have someone else do that when I can do that? And learning to hire a cleaning lady, hire someone to do stuff, it's okay. It's not the best use of your time for certain things unless it brings you absolute joy to do. Delegating is really, really important, and allowing other people to do things.
Very, very, very wise. So you brought up about the difference a little bit between men and women. How important is it, and what do you recommend is people are entering into a marriage or a partnership about talking about money with your future partner, and what kind of recommendations do you have around that?
It's really important to have these conversations to understand how are we marrying our money. I am a big fan of marrying money. What I mean by that is sometimes, and I see it more with the younger people, and it can be effective, but only if there's really good communication, is sometimes he'll have his bank account, she has her bank account, and she pays certain bills out of her bank account, and he pays certain bills out of it. But maybe they haven't really had a concrete conversation about it, and the women go, oh, that's fine, he makes more money, or whatever, and they haven't really married the money and had those hard discussions. So generally in most marriages, there's one person who maybe spends more than the other or spends on different things. So we actually have tools that we can, I was like, let's go to the videotape and look where the money's being spent, because he'll say, oh, she's spending money on all this dumb stuff like clothes for the children, and she'll be like, he spends money on really dumb things like snowmobiles, and he thinks, well, those are assets and investments, and she's like, the children have to have clothing. So people will fight about these things. So having, you have to adult up here at this point and look at what's going on. And knowing what the numbers are is really helpful. So there's so many tools now that you can plug in your bank and your credit cards and have those meaningful conversations about it. I suggest that people at least sit down once a year and treat this like a business. Your family is a business. Even for stay-at-home moms, I hate when women say, or men, it's usually women though, that will say, oh, I don't work, I just stay at home raising kids. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the hardest
You're just
job.
not getting paid. Girl, you're just not getting paid.
I go to work to relax.
You're working.
In fact, I joked with my husband the other day, now that the kids are grown and out of the house, I was like, I'm ready to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, okay. He's like, they're gone now. I'm like, exactly.
Yeah. And I think I had a pretty good model. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She had some side gigs here. She started out as a teacher and she did real estate, but she was home. But she said, we are raising a family together, and so like your dad couldn't do his job if I didn't do what I'm doing, and so I feel like I had a good, healthy model for that. At least.
It's a partnership, and you have to treat it like a partnership. And unfortunately, our society does not value. Our society doesn't seem to value anything that doesn't have a dollar associated with it. So, one of the things that we do in our practice is actually put the life value on the stay-at-home mom. Like, let's say she was out of the picture, how much would that nanny cost you? How much would a cleaning person cost? How much would all these things? And you find out that you're being underpaid by about $120,000 a year. So, it's really important that the family have these adult conversations to be like, yes, now here's the challenge for women. For every year you take off to be a stay-at-home mom, or to take off to take care of an aging parent or a sibling who's disabled, it requires 5 years of additional work because of lost wages and Social Security benefits and things like that. So this is where our society is right now. So it really puts a huge burden on women. Women have incredibly high rates of poverty after age 65, which, so my point with that is part of the planning is that there are things like spousal IRAs. So one spouse is, putting money into his 401k, and she's got a big egg in her column of the assets under her name. So, make sure that you can, if possible, put something in her column on the net worth statement.
I think if you didn't have a good, or maybe you didn't have much of a model, or you didn't talk about money at all, it can be extra hard to have these conversations, right? And so there's a little bit of reparenting involved, I think, too, because if you didn't do it when you were a kid, you have to develop these almost extra skills, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's where, if you do work, look for a financial planner that specializes in planning with couples and stuff like that. There's lots of different kinds of financial people. There's some that are just interested in managing your investments, and then there's others that are more focused in on actual planning for couples and relationships and helping you with all the nitty-gritty that goes on the underneath of the planning. Because my thought is that, if you can be saving X amount of percent of your income, in that your retirement will take care of itself. Like it'll happen. It's all this mumble jumble in between, and your daily actions that will impact your long-term financial life. So It is. It's hard to adult because our society does not seem to like adulting anymore. It's when I was a kid, I was like, can't wait to be an adult, and now it's like, oh, we don't want to be adults anymore. And I was like, wow, that's a really turnaround for society. It's like how can we,
My daughter was like, I don't want to grow up.
My
Like, that is hard.
my daughter said that. I know. Yeah, it is hard.
it's a funny change in our society that it's no longer like, ooh, I'm an adult now.
Yeah, people are waiting to get their
Right.
license. Well, and so on this subject, we're talking about how to talk to your spouse or your partner about money and hopefully preemptively having conversations, but also like, how do we talk to our children about this? How do we be good stewards?
I think teaching, like what you said, doing that role model, teaching them about money, not giving them everything. They they expect everything for a long time. I'll pick on my daughter right now. She's 26 and she actually works in my firm now. And when they're with you, they remind me of the birds that I was just watching my cardinals, where the fully grown cardinal kid is sitting there quivering for mom to pick up the seed and put it in their mouth. It's like, the seed is right there. Why aren't you eating? Just put your head down. So we went shopping a couple months ago. I'm like, I'll take you, take you to the mall and that. And she went and put this huge pile of clothes together and walks up to the counter and she looks over at me and I was like, it's not going on my credit card.
Good for you.
And she just looked at me like, oh, and she put everything back except $1. So, sometimes you just have to just be like, I call it feral parenting, like,
Yeah.
just, let them get the job when they're 13 doing some side job. Let them, the power of earning a dollar, or whatever, whether it's babysitting, mowing lawns, things like that, earning some money and having them be stewards of that money. There's actual apps now that you can do to help kids with this. But you're right. Actually, as when I was on the board of the Financial Planning Association, we championed, and they did pass into law, that high school can now offer a financial planning class as an alternate for one of their math credits in high school. Because
That's wonderful.
I know, right? Because I know everyone thinks because I'm a financial planner, I'm really good with math, but calculus, trigonometry, I will never build a bridge. That's just not in the future. But everyone is going to have a credit card with interest rates, right? No one knows how an interest rate works. At 18, they don't understand what 18.8% means. And it's indentured servitude is what it means. How
It's
a
very easy to very easy to get in trouble with those.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our society is all consumer oriented. Now, I will tell you that Gen Z are the thriftiest of the generations. They are very, very thrifty. Well, and you think about their frame that they grew up in. They're close to the Depression. They have similarities to the Depression era babies because they came to kind of consciousness during the Great Recession.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, where the millennials came to during the boom of the 90s and stuff like that. They have a little more, but then they can't buy a house. So it's really it's,
It makes it
every
difficult.
generation has their challenges.
Your background in cultural anthropology must be like just a unique perspective on some of this.
Yeah, just understanding behavioral finance is funny because I've been doing it my whole career, and now it's becoming the fashion for financial planners to actually study this now. So there's a book called Behavioral Investor by Daniel Crosby, who I've done a podcast with him. He's fascinating. Your brain uses up 20% of your calories on a daily basis, but only 5% of your body weight. So your brain, and we haven't had a major upgrade in 200,000 years. So our brain is still in caveman mode and our society is not. So our brain is designed to see fear at all, and marketers know this, right? They know that, I fear I'm getting older, I fear I'm too fat, I fear I'm doing this, I fear that the neighbor's doing better than me, so I fear I need to get a better car, all that kind of stuff. So we have to kind of start to rethink our caveman brain and put a stop on it. But we actually at our firm have snacks in the room because if your brain's hungry, it doesn't make good decisions. If you have to go to the bathroom, you don't make good decisions. Like all these little things. So your brain is constantly trying to find shortcuts to things. So if it sees fear, like, oh my gosh, the stock market's crashing. So I fear I will lose everything. So people make bad decisions, which is why you're supposed to buy low and sell high, right, with stocks. But the average person buys high and sells low because they're letting fear on both ends. Fear I'm going to miss out on a great deal. Fear I'm going to lose everything. So learning how your brain works and makes decisions is really important.
Very interesting. And it leads into, that what you said about the adult brain. And when we use emotions to rule us instead of logic and rationale, right? That's where we can get into big mistakes. That's when retail therapy gets out of hand,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. And it's okay to let yourself have, but just know
Yeah.
like, okay, this is the time. Yeah, it's in the mind trash that women play on this with the I'm not good with math, and that kind of a thing. That's just, it's baloney. You can add, I mean, unless you have a serious learning disability, all you need to do is be able to add 2 plus 2, 2 minus 2. Financial planning is not rocket science. That's all I will tell you. Like, there's a lot of people in our industry that try to make it sound like it's rocket science. It really is not.
Is there any data as to how many Americans actually keep a budget, like actually pay attention monthly,
Well,
weekly?
now I don't know that number off the top of my head. And I would imagine that whatever that number is, I would have it because people will lie. The tool I use will bring in 90 days of back. Like you can plug in your credit cards and your bank statements, and it'll bring in the last 90 days of data, which I like analyzing as opposed to telling someone to keep a budget. It's like telling someone to keep a calorie counter, right? You sit there and you're like, oh, because I'll fake it for 2 weeks. I can fake it for 2 weeks. I've been on every diet under the planet, and you'll be like, I don't know why I'm overweight. I don't eat hardly anything. But if I had a thing that went back for 90 days and it saw the Dove bars, the candy bars, the Cokes, the whatever, I would be like, oh, maybe that's why I'm overweight. And it's the same thing with your money. You kind of, it's the little things that are slipping through your hands. It's the lattes that you're buying, the extra nails. I mean, it's your everyday money decisions that are impacting your long-term health. And so I think looking back on your history and going, oh, do I really need like a Disney, a Hulu? I do that diet at least once a year where I go through all my credit card statements and go, I found a whole bunch of subscriptions that I had no idea that were in there that I had bought for organizations that I help out. And I was like, holy smokes, I'm going to go broke helping out all these organizations. So,
Yeah, and I did that. I try to do that once a year too, Diane. And last year I found I had 2 Spotify accounts, and it turns out some scammer got my credit card, and like it was such a low amount of money that I didn't notice it. And sure enough, and Spotify was great about it, by the way. They handled it for
Yay,
me. But
Spotify.
yay, Spotify.
but it's so easy, right? Because they make everything
Yep.
just like $4.99.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and I think the secret to this, though, also is how to really look at what you're spending without the judgment and shame.
Well, right. And I mean, anyone can just Google, a typical household budget, like what percentage should be spent on, different things and that. So there are numbers that, like, how much you should be spending on housing. You shouldn't be spending more of a third of your, income on housing, which is hard now because housing is so expensive. Which is why you need to know your worth, right? And demand the pay that you need in order to sustain your life. And I think that's where, people get off track in that. For women, since we're trying to talk a little bit about women, my rule of thumb is you should be saving 10 to 12% of your income. So if you have a young woman just fresh out of college, since a lot of people are graduating right now, if you just sign up for your 401k at 12%. If you did that, you can go. So the way I approach budgeting, if you are saving enough money and you're not out, your mortgage is being paid at the right rate, your student loans or whatever debt you have, your debt to income ratios are correct, knock yourself out. Life is short. I also have had a lot of clients pass away. I've had a lot of people that have saved their brains out and haven't lived, and then they retired, and then within a year had a very bad diagnosis. I just had another one this week. And, so it's this little bit of give and take. Like if you can just do those basic things, then enjoy life. Because hoarding the money is not going to be good either.
That is really important advice because, yeah, if you're not enjoying it, what's the point, right? So you're going to enjoy it in 50 years? Like,
Yeah. What are you
are
going to be,
you, right?
75 trying to climb the pyramids? No. But
Exactly.
that's where budgeting and that, and I know it's really hard for younger people now because they're not getting paid what they need to be paid. That's the real crux of what's out there. It's, people go, well, housing's gotten out of hand. Housing, I mean, and it is true, housing has gotten out of hand. I did a study, my own little internal study in 2008, 9, 10, trying to figure out like what has gone off the rails here. What, like, are we spending too much on cars? Things like that. And the percentage of our income that we spend on cars has not changed since the car was invented. What has changed is how much we spend on a house and how big our houses are. Our houses, my grandfather who came from Norway in 1924, he had a 750 square foot house in Hazel Park and they had 10 people in that house. Now that's extreme, right? They raised 8 children in this little 2-bedroom, tiny little house. But then my parents eventually built their dream house out in Romeo that was like 1,700 square feet, but by today's standard, the average home is now 2,500 square feet. And we have 2 children. They each have to have their own bathroom because God forbid they share a bathroom, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is crazy. We spend too much on, as a percentage of our lifestyle, we spend too much on houses. I find that's one of the biggest financial mistakes I tell people is you buy too big a house. So people laugh when I'm like, I'm in a 1,500 square foot house now and I love it. It's easy to clean. I can plug one plug in and I can vacuum the entire house.
Simplify.
But isn't it also that housing prices have, like, it is a bigger proportion of our income, but houses are so much more expensive. Like the whole just don't spend on the avocado toast, right? Like, but I read this really interesting article a little while ago that it used to be the percentage of our income to buy something like a TV was a big portion of what we spend. So when we dropped the luxury items, it made a big impact. But now TVs are so cheap. And like the things that we used to think of as luxury are just, it's not the same proportion, but rents are crazy high now. And can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like
Well,
the shifting dynamics
yeah,
in
it
the
is. I
bigger
mean, the
picture.
percentage that we spend on food in the last century is drastically different. We used to spend about 40% of our income on food at the turn of the last century. And now it's much lower. So, we have access to more food and things like that because of industrialization and that. The housing issue is really a housing stock issue. Since 2008, we have been building millions less units than we ever have. So we're about, I don't want to say the number, but we're millions of units short that would normally be built, and that's because after the Great Recession, the banks had to unload lots of real estate, and then they just weren't making those loans. Developers, it's very hard for a developer to make money on anything but a high-end house. And partly because of the way the tax code is written now, too, it doesn't really incentivize them to make what we would call workforce housing. The house that a nurse or fireman, a teacher could afford. And we see it in our Southeast Michigan. My son works in high-end real estate, and I went and looked at one of his models. From the outside of the house, I was like, they spend $1 million on this house. I mean, it's like 3,300 square feet, which it's a big house, and it was beautiful on the inside, but it was off a major intersection that if I told you guys, you would laugh that they're spending $1 million off of this, as opposed to there was no incentive for this builder to build a house that what we call the household formation person, the young person doing a household formation, which, is usually used to be 25 to 30, right? You would get done with your education or whatever your skill training was. Maybe you were going through a trade school. My brother, he got into carpentry, which was my family of generations of carpenters at 18, right? Got into the program. He was retired by 49. But I was the smart one that went to college. I'm like, I don't know, you're in a fishing boat in Baltimore. You seem pretty smart to me. So we're just not doing that housing formation and that comes down to some tax code and policy issues that we need to champion. So it is hard, and the old people need to get out of their big homes and let the younger people get into them. But that's another issue. There aren't housing options for that 65 to 75-year-old who wants to downsize. For them, it costs almost the exact cost of what their house is to move to a condo, a nice condo. It's almost the same cost for them. So a lot of them are like, why am I doing this other than I want a ranch style lifestyle? It's a really weird dynamic, and it's going to require some major policy changes at a federal level to help solve this problem.
I have one question that I've met women in the past who've had situations where they're married and maybe they were the stay-at-home partner, or they just didn't earn a lot of money, but basically all the bills, everything was in the spouse's name, right? And so the spouse passes, or God forbid they get divorced, and now the woman has no credit score, has no financial records whatsoever. What advice would you give women or men, whoever the person is in the relationship that isn't doing the main economic
and
lift?
it's true. It's not always, in my little matriarchal family high tree, it's usually the women who are doing the day-to-day bills. So it's very typical that the woman will handle the everyday household bills and that the man makes the big decisions about the money and investing. Not always true, but yeah, it's very important to have a purse of your own, as Elizabeth Cady Stanton said, to have a credit card in your name, to be joint on all the bank accounts, to have your own credit score. I don't see it as much as I used to when I first got into the business. Most women now, but a lot will just try to remain ignorant. And sometimes it's a power play in the family dynamic. For some, I will stereotype that it is the men trying to control the women. That he will say, here, you don't need this. Here's your allowance, kind of a thing.
That's why it's put out in
I'm not
divorce.
a huge,
Yes, maybe.
but some women are for the sake of peace of the family or whatever, or maybe it's a cultural thing. Not every culture, is the same. So. But stand up for that right. Stand up to get your own card and things like that. Because, for example, Social Security, you get a spousal benefit after 10 years of marriage. So I remember one woman got divorced. I was like, can you just wait like 6 more months? Literally, she got divorced after 9.5 years. And if she was a stay-at-home mom, she would have 0 credits towards her Social Security. So, knowing these rules is really, really important, and don't be ignorant about it. You have Google. I used to have to go to a library, ladies, old-fashioned library.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, where can we find good resources like this?
Google, man, say how.
Google the importance.
Google.
Learn how to play the game, right?
What's
Learn
that?
how to play the game. This, we didn't write the rules, but learn the rules.
Well, and the other wealth generator in our society is owning a business. Women, are owning more and more businesses, but they tend to own different businesses than men. Women tend to open service businesses, which have a very low profit margin on it, and men will buy manufacturing businesses that have large things on it. So, I remember a woman telling me that she was selling British goods, like food products, and that she imported, and she was selling them basically out of the trunk of her car, and she was going to open a storefront. And I said, a retail store is like the worst, one, you got to be there. I worked in retail back in my day. I'm like, the hours you have to do. And she's like, well, I'll just shut my door when I have to go pick up my daughter from school. I was like, that's not going to work. That's not how retail works, And so I can't tell you how many women I've seen build really bad business plans. And then I've seen some run magnificent business plans, listen to the experts. If they bought a franchise, they actually listen to the franchise model that was laid out for them. I had one person not listen to the franchise. They're like, I'm not going to spend that much on marketing. And 2 years later, she'd blown through all her money and had to close the business. So, open smart businesses, do these things. It's a golden age out there, folks. You have the information, save 12% of your income, open a great business, go out on the edge, pay down your debt, that kind of stuff. It can be hard. A little sacrifice can lead to really great things down the road.
And even like this seems minor, but it's probably not. Like, know your passwords, right? You don't want to get in a situation. I mean, you gotta,
Not minor. We need to.
yeah, not minor, I guess, but like, do you see this a lot where like a spouse suddenly passes and they haven't
Yes,
really
it's a huge
kind of done their due diligence and they don't even know what accounts they have, right?
Yes.
If you change jobs, you might have this weird IRA that you never rolled over and
that's why, sitting down once a year, like like you go to get a physical once a year, go get a financial physical done. I highly encourage you to work with a financial planner. Studies show that someone who works with a financial planner generally does better over time. And it's because you have like a third party arbiter of someone who will ask those questions. If they're good, they will help talk to both sides, bring it in a little bit, because usually we'll have one person who's not asking questions or just sitting quietly. A good financial planner will reach out to that person and say, let's talk about what your concerns are. And they'll go, oh, nothing. And they're like, well, you might be concerned about what happens if he dies. I do an experiment with my new clients where I kill each of them off. And I say, you're dead now. You can't talk. You tell me what day one looking like for you. And the other spouse will be shocked, be like, you have no idea about what this is. You don't have any idea where the passwords are, all that kind of stuff, or what's your income going to look like and things like that. And guess what, ladies? The average age of widowhood is 56. 56. Now, I turn that into a comedy thing that if you're in your early 50s and thinking about divorce, you might just want to wait a few years, but because widow money is better than divorce money. But anyway.
Yeah, let's move into the comedy part.
because Lisa mentioned that you just did your first show as a stand-up comedian,
I
and I'm
did,
like,
I did.
I have to know more about
Well,
this.
I will be doing that same bit on this coming. They asked me to be in a contest, so I could get a chance to go to the Burbank Comedy Festival. And the reason is I've done these financial workshops for 30 some odd years, and everyone's always like, "You're so funny, you should turn that into a bit." And so I have turned some of my financial planning and gender stuff into comedy. But it's so important, ladies. Let's I don't want to minimize this with a joke or whatever, because it is so important that women, and this is good for men. When women do fine, men do fine. Our children do better. This is good for society.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's exactly right.
Well, we will look forward to following your comedy career, and I love that. I love comedians and going to see shows like this. So
I
we'll be in
think
a
it goes back
workshop.
to I don't have much of a sense of fear on things. People are like, I'm like, I used to, so I was an entrepreneur as a little girl. I would raise worms in my backyard and sell them at extortion prices to my father when he went fishing. And then he would come back with the unused cup, and I would put them back in the box farm I had for my worms and resell them the next week to him. There are tons of little entrepreneurial women, girls out there. Let's encourage it. Oh yeah, I have lemonade stands, everything. So they're out there, and we just don't always encourage those things because good girls don't ask for money. So let's encourage the good girls to start businesses and do things there that are out of their comfort zone.
Oh,
Yeah.
my 11-year-old and her best friend, they are all over this. They were like fixing bikes and they do lemonade stands and they're out there hustling because they want Starbucks.
Well, but here's what you need to do now with them. Open a Robinhood account with them or something like that. You're joining on as a custodial because they're not an adult. But sit there and say, let's buy your first share in a company. What do you think's out there? So if you want a great little website, finviz.com, finviz.com. You can look at the whole S&P 500 at a glance. and you can see what's doing well and what's not doing well. I like to buy things that aren't doing well and look them up, find out why they're not doing well, and then think maybe they'll be doing better in the future because we're supposed to buy low and sell high. So
Right.
talk to your daughter, say, let's buy our first share of a company. You know, because Robinhood, I'm not promoting them, you know, but you can buy, you know, one share of something and it doesn't really cost, like they have zero trading fees and stuff. And how they make their money is more complicated than that. So, but it's for educational purposes, it's a great way to teach a young person about investing in a company. You know, you are investing, like you're a businesswoman, you're a little businesswoman fixing bikes. You need to diversify your business and buy into someone else's business. So which business would you like to buy into? Would you like to buy into McDonald's or Starbucks? So you like buying their lattes? How about you become an owner of Starbucks instead of just a consumer of Starbucks?
I mean, let's face it, I'll be learning right alongside her.
I was going to say,
So
I have one daughter that's under 18, but my other ones are older. I mean, is Robinhood good for
it's a
older
great
folks too,
starter
Ellen?
app for
Yeah.
anyone. You know, my son was doing it. He's 30 now, but some years ago, if you guys remember the whole GameStop stock thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I invested, like $200 in GameStop, and I was like, oh my God, I'm kind of like, that's not logical. That company, blah blah blah, blah. And then he made like a couple $1,000s on it really quick. Of course, then it went bust, but he sold at the high, and he used it as a down payment for his first home. So,
Dang.
Oh,
now he's had three
amazing.
homes and he's 30 years old.
Wow.
I'm like you're light years ahead of where I was at your age.
So learn the rules of the game and play the game.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
not dirty, and let's teach your daughters to be owners as well as consumers.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's empowering women, right?
Yeah.
Empowering women with some of these skills.
Yeah.
Yeah. My husband and I got married in the Catholic Church, and um, you had to do these pre-Cana courses. And I thought it was actually really good that we had to talk about like that we had this whole session on finance, and we had to have a number. Like if you or your spouse is going to spend over, and you get to pick it, but I think back then, it's 25 years ago, like $100, right? So if either one of you is going to spend more than 100, then you got to talk to each other about it. And so it had some like just some like indicator lights and some it was a helpful framework for entering this marriage, because even if we were on the same page, I think, right, but like we didn't, it helped facilitate this conversation that I think has served us well.
Yeah, it's a really good. I mean, I've had people come to me before they've gotten married. I've had women have me vet their potential mate if they were acceptable financially. The poor guy was sweating bullets. He's like, if I don't do well, she's not going to marry me. I was like, oh my gosh. So I think in sharing that template with your friends that are young people getting married or old people getting married. I mean, a lot of people get second marriages and things like that. But second marriages are usually very different. If you're getting married like 45, 50, children aren't going to be the thing. Having those discussions, because it's usually your money, her money, and that requires special planning in how to do things like that. So having that third person, whether it's a priest, a minister, or a financial planner, help arbitrate those conversations can take away the like, oh, I don't want to ask them about that, or and I also think it's good to have a little money that you don't have to ask anyone for, I like being able to go to Chico's without someone going, what did you buy that for? And he likes to, do his thing. So I like the idea of having a dollar amount where, it's like, hey, I spent less than $100 or $200. It's, it's out of my pot. You're on a need to know basis on that.
Well, sometimes we don't even know what questions we should be asking,
Right.
too.
Yeah.
And so this third party is, yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. And if you just Google how to hire a financial person, they give you a great checklist on what to look for in a planner too. And, just not just like the qualifications and the skill sets, but there's like some soft questions. So I always tell people that you want to find someone that works with people like you. Sometimes you call someone that only works with people that, make $1 million or more, and, they're not going to spend the time that you need. So you want to find someone that's a really good fit and that you feel comfortable, because you do get financially naked with that person. So make sure you're really comfortable with them.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Anything else?
Well, I think
We're
you want to hit her with
We
the
want to hit the big question.
the big
What's the big
What,
question?
what does the matriarchy mean to you, Diane?
Okay, well, I love this question because, as I mentioned, I was an anthropology student in that. So, there are matriarchal societies out there. And what you tend to find is that, they're making sure everyone's at the table, matriarchal hierarchy, things like that. So it means that we all have a seat at the table, as opposed to the patriarchy kind of structure is more of a pyramid shaped, where there's, kind of goes down. A matriarchy is more flat and even and level. And to me, that's what it really means. I know some gentlemen are afraid of, like, if women get power, we're going to crush them and get revenge for the millions of years that they've oppressed us. And that's not our goal, So what it means to me is opening up and being a level playing field for everyone, so that everyone can share their talents and their gifts throughout our society. So that's what the matriarchy means to me. And I really applaud you guys for taking this on.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. I love that answer. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, great answer.
Well, I appreciate
Yeah.
you guys having me on. As you can see, I love
Yeah,
to talk.
thank you for joining us. This was a wonderful discussion. I feel like we don't have these kind of discussions enough. So we really appreciate your expertise on this and sharing it with us today. Are you still working as a financial
Yep,
planner?
yep, I still
And
work.
you want to give a little pitch on your company?
Sure. I'm the managing. Well, first off, I'd started my own company in 2004 in downtown Rochester called the Athena Financial Group, and then at the end of 2020, I merged my firm with Arrowroot Family Office, which was out of California. They were looking to expand, and I wanted a succession plan because I'm just turned 60 this year, and it takes years to execute a successful succession plan. And it's been a great partnership in that. So it's Arrowroot Family Office. We have offices not just in Michigan, but in California, Seattle, Denver, and Virginia now. So we are all over I have clients in almost every state in the country. And we do lead with planning. So, we're a true planning firm. I will lead with a very in-depth physical and have those tough money questions. By the way, I meant to recommend a book called Crucial Conversations. It's another life-changing book. Crucial Conversations, a great behavioral scientist that does revolutionary work. And it'll help you with everything from telling someone they have bad breath to, I want to leave this marriage. So it's a great book.
That's a lot. That's a big spectrum.
Yeah, when you're working
There's
closely.
breath mints, guys. There's
Have the
breath
spritz.
mints.
But yeah, so we are a great firm, and I have two other associates in our firm in the Rochester location. So someone to back me up as I get old, and yeah, so we manage about $400 million in assets. So
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we so appreciate having you on and helping us, facilitate some of these conversations and kind of scratch the surface on, like, how do we talk about money, and, kind of removing some of the stigma as well.
yeah, yeah. Well, good.
Very
Well, thank you
important.
again. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Wow, huh?
Amazing.
She is amazing.
That was a really great conversation, better than I thought it was going to be honest. And I learned so many things, Kath. Some of the things that she said that just really, really struck me that I'd never thought of before was that the idea that, maybe part of the reason that women struggle with money and asking for what we're worth is that naughty girls ask for money.
Oh, that was a little chilling when
That
she
was
said
chilling. Like that kind of I felt something with that. And then the other thing that I just really, really liked was the idea of becoming not just consumers, but owners. And so we don't just consume these companies' products, but we become owners of the company. And I think a lot of us don't think of it that way.
Yeah, no.
Right. And so I'm sharing that with my daughters.
And it can can influence the way you look at companies, and it's kind of the whole, what we're talking about, like taking action,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Taking action. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, crucial conversations. So now that's
Oh.
another book to add to the list of books.
Ever-growing list of books.
Yeah.
So one
great.
thing that I thought was really interesting was she was saying, start a business, and I'm like, okay, that's good. That's good advice for
Yeah.
women in general.
Yeah.
And then I thought of us starting our business,
Yes.
and you're getting us how we come.
We're a work in progress.
This is kind of us.
this is,
And
we're authentic. We're living our authentic lives in this.
living our authentic lives. And if you've noticed, the format changed a little bit, it's because we are literally in our kitchens recording this.
Yeah.
And, we had some technical difficulties. So see, I couldn't even get out the technical difficulties.
It was a moment this morning trying to get this to work, but
we pivoted.
we did.
We
We
made
did.
it
We
work,
flexed, and so we appreciate you guys, flexing with us on this, and we're just having so much fun doing this, and we've been so fortunate to have such wonderful guests, and we will continue to bring that to you. And if you have any ideas of a topic that you would like us to cover, please reach out. You can reach us through their website or the many social media channels that we're on. We'd love to hear from you, to hear what you think.
Yeah. And if avocado toast and Starbucks are not how you want to treat yourself with retail therapy, how about t-shirts?
We have t-shirts.
gotta plug
we've
it.
got to plug it. And our mugs, of course.
Yeah. Our mugs. Cheers, Lisa.
Cheers.
You always have to drink after,
So
you,
thank
after
you.
you cheers.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer.
I do
You gotta
too.
drink
I
after you
do.
cheers.
So
Yeah, so like and subscribe to our podcast, and welcome to our community.
welcome to the Matriarchy.
Thanks.